Good morning slash afternoon. I guess no one's here from Europe. So good morning to everyone.
Good morning. I just posted in the CNCF Slack, so we'll see if get some responses in there. All right, it's been 3 minutes. I guess let's get this started. Recording's already started. And let's see, where's my hosting template at? If you have the doc open, if you could put yourself in the attendees. We've notified the Slack channel, the recording started. I don't see any new faces. Reminder that this meeting operates under a code of conduct, so don't walk up and slap the host. That code of conduct is linked in the doc. All right, so we have one item that's been added previously from the triage party meeting to discuss, but first off, if there's any show and tells to add or any other topics that you want to bring up, now's a good time to add them in.
I'll have a show and tell for next week. It's not quite ready. I broke it after trying some rebasing, but I do have a demo of, which I'll show next week, of Tink running on with the K3S as a backend and Boots with K3S as a backend, which is pretty cool on bare metal.
That's a lot. Awesome. I look forward to that. And meanwhile, if maybe we could, well, it looks like we are getting a number of items added to the topics list. So I was going to say, if nothing else, maybe we could talk about some of your open PRs, mostly refactoring, I would say, right?
Yes, that would be great.
Yeah. Folks, we're just building up the list of topics in the Tinkerbell community meeting doc. If you need the link, it's in the CNCF channel. With that, maybe continue adding stuff, but let's start off with the first topic, governance and membership policies. Last time we met, we were looking into guidance on this from what was found in CNCF, and we had some proposals that were raised on the Tinkerbell proposals. And I believe the pull request that's linked here, I believe, is one that has been merged. There were some follow-up steps that we were going to look into to get us into a state where reality matches what's in that proposal. And there were some open questions. So Jacob, that was your PR that was merged. I wonder if you could fill us in on what the diff is between reality and the proposal?
Yeah, for sure. So the governance proposal that was made creates some new roles in the community. So you have approvers, maintainers, and I should know my own PR here. Now I forget it. There's one other one. But one of the points being is that we don't have those, they're not reflected in our GitHub organization. Reviewer, approver, and maintainer. I think there might be a maintainer team, but I'm almost certain there's not a reviewer or an approver. So that is one of the diffs in terms of this proposal and the state of reality. We would need to create those teams in GitHub, I guess, or groups, and then assign each repository those kinds of permissions. The PR for that does link to a couple of Google Docs. I guess it's in a comment down below. Oh, I don't have the Google Doc. Oh yeah, I do. Yeah, I'll post it in the Zoom chat. And this talks about the bootstrapping process. This kind of one-time thing that would help us to get the current state to the desired state. It's got a lot of details in there. It kind of documents some of the things like action items, and there's a small little FAQ and whatnot. So yeah, that's kind of where I have it at the moment. I do still have one action item to update in a PR kind of, we talked about this idea of like a boomerang option for people who have gone inactive and the ability to come back in quickly after a long period of inactivity. So I do still need to update that. But other than that, most of it's out there if there's any questions or comments.
This is when was this? Has this doc been? Is this doc older than it looks, or is this directly like in response to the PR, like fresh new content?
Well, it is in response to the PR, but I created this at the beginning of January.
Okay. Cool. So we have to-do items there. Maybe next step would be like turning those to-do items into something in GitHub so that we can track it and follow it. Let me know if that makes sense, because it doesn't necessarily. If they're all meta, maybe they don't.
Yeah, I could do it. The action items I think would require somebody with elevated privileges in the org. But if it's helpful, I can still create them, but they'll have to be assigned to somebody with those kind of elevated privileges. And they're also like when I created it, I didn't know all of the GitHub work that will need to be done, or if we want to use some automation tool, or I don't know. But so I don't know how accurate some of these will be in terms of what someone would actually need to do. But you let me know. I'm fine creating issues in a repo for these or not.
I'm fine with having GitHub be the way that we get from desired state to state. It keeps things tracked, keeps things accountable. This doc is great and it provides a lot of context, and I think it's probably fine to share the link within. It's already shared here. So yeah, I'm thinking we can probably also include this in the community doc. I don't see a reason not to,
sure.
Unless this link is, do people spam documents once they find the link?
It's okay. I'm okay with that. I can turn off the sharing if it really came down to that. So yeah, it's fine.
All right. So
I would be more excited if somebody found this through our agenda meeting and then it became a big deal. I'd be more excited about that than anything else.
I'm gonna add in here like a to-do is to create issues. I don't know which project makes the most sense. It's kind of like that long lost project. What was it even called? That had all the automation. It wasn't the .github project. It was a different one, right?
Oh, I don't know if I'm familiar with that one.
But
Is it
sort of
like
the meta one.
The org one.
Yeah, the org one.
Or that's what it was. Okay, yeah.
We should
So
rename that repo the Lost Boys to go along with the
Okay, that's an official to do. We need the Lost Boys repo. We need to figure out what it's going to be. All right, so that's, can I throw your name on that?
Yeah, mine. Yeah. So sorry, just to clarify, the .github repo is where you want me to create those, or do we still have the .org, or what was
The org repo does still exist. It has a couple of tickets in it.
Yeah, we
Okay.
recreated the org one because the .github applies as templates to like everything. So if you create like an issue template on .github, it applies as an issue template on everything in the org. Where if you want to,
It looks like there was a thread where they were gonna archive the org repo.
I think we revived it.
Okay, that what happened. All right.
Okay, so yeah, I'll use the org repo then. Sounds good.
All right, and so there were other documents that we had linked to. I did read through them and I left some comments at the tail end of that PR when I merged it. I don't know that we have to go through it here, but I'll link what my comments were. But it was basically that what was represented in the PR was as good a place to take the document that we had already to progress it towards some future state. Something that we discovered along the way was that there were some CNCF project templates that we could use in the future, the next time we're all creating a community together. All right, so anything else on governance and membership policies?
Is there a specific person that I can maybe pair with to push some of this through? I selfishly would love to be a part of the organization again and get this through as quick as possible. Is that something that would be someone possibly available this week or next week for me to pair with?
I think, yeah, you can right here.
Ping you? Okay,
Yeah.
Thanks, Marcus.
Just to, for my understanding, are we saying that are we going to add all these people to the teams or just create the teams without any people in them?
I think maybe the first step would probably be to create them.
Okay, yeah. I'm just, I want to make sure that we give folks like some window to say, yes, I do want to be in this role. On like notified on GitHub, like, okay, you have, I don't know, whatever period we want to make it, 2 weeks, a month, something like that. And we don't have to drag it out, but we can just say, like, please act, and then we'll add you. If you don't act, we can add you later, but just, I don't want to put anyone in a spot they don't want to be in.
Yep, totally fair. Yeah, I have that as an action item. Actually already invite people to their proposed roles. So.
Okay, great, thanks.
All right. So if anything else on that topic? No. All right. The next topic on here, Boots is currently slightly broken.
Yeah. So, and Jacobs has kindly reviewed my original pull request, which we tested, which didn't quite fix things. I don't know. Scott, I think, opened up a new PR, and I think Jacob maybe has reviewed it. Just sort of heads up to people, we were trying to upgrade to the latest Boots in production using our Helm charts, and the behavior of like public, I forget exactly which environment. There's an environment variable that's supposed to be the FQDN that, like, HTTP traffic, if you're running Kubernetes coming in through an ingress, is supposed to, that Boots would then use as the URL for those HTTP URLs. That code, when the shift to iPixie dust went in, stopped working as expected. So Scott and I have been working on that, and Jacob's been very helpful reviewing stuff. But the repo is currently slightly broken. That is, if we don't solve that today, we'll make sure that we open a ticket to say like, hey, warning, this is currently broken. We should not cut a release of the sandbox until we fix everything. But yeah, go ahead, Jacob.
Yeah, I don't think, maybe not this meeting, but yeah, I'm available anytime this week. I do have a theory that it's actually an environment variable that's causing the problem and not a problem in the code flow or anything like that. But
cool. All right. Yeah.
So if you want, I can ping you later on Slack or something, and we can sync up if you like.
That'd be great. Thanks.
From a community perspective and as a user, is there something that could have been surfaced more clearly? Like, what would you like to see on changes so that you're not hit by things like this?
I mean, I think so. Honestly, I think this is something where, and that question is the exact thing I was about to address. So you did not interrupt me. You prompted. So we're currently running it within Equinix Metal using Kubernetes with Helm charts that are currently closed. And like, it would be great if we could clean those up and open them up and have them in the community. And ideally get to like again, it sounds like if Micah's got, like, I'm seeing like Micah saying like, oh, I'm gonna have a demo of like backed by Kubernetes and with running in Kubernetes and K3S. Like, I don't know, I am not an expert in whether Helm and K3S play nicely, but it'd be super cool if we could get Helm charts that we could move the sandbox into something like K3S in a way that the Helm charts that are used in production are very close to, by anyone using it in production, that they're open source Helm charts that are either exactly what's being used or a close approximation. Getting that sort of further step of maturity, I think would be great for anyone who is operating it in production or playing with it and wanting to get towards operating in production. So certainly, like, I would have to do some research on the back end of like, could we dump a tidied up version of our existing Helm charts somewhere? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know yet. But if there are others who find this like an interesting thing, I would love to eventually push that forward. Again, depending on bandwidth, but certainly in the long term, that's a thing I would love to see. Does that answer that question, Marcus?
That answers that question. I noted in the doc, I think, what it boiled down to, but feel free to update it. And Micah, do you have a direct response to that? I noticed you went off mic. Or on
yeah,
mic.
I mean, it's just, what I'm doing is just using Kubernetes as the backend. It's not running, it's still running in Docker Compose. But
oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, that'd still be great to have a Helm chart. Right. I'm really curious, because is that for the Boots HTTP service? What about the like TFTP
yeah, so
service?
it's super complicated, right? And it's become slightly more complicated now thanks to the refactor of there's a new repo called iPixieDust, which one of the benefits, like, let's be clear, one of the huge benefits we get from iPixieDust is the iPixie binaries are recompiled when the inputs change, either which release of which commit of iPixie or the configuration files that are going into that build process. So if you PR a change that causes the binaries to get rebuilt, automation will rebuild it and open a PR that can be merged, and then official new iPixie binaries that can be embedded in happen, which means that the build for Boots is just pulling like static assets instead of recompiling iPixie every time Boots makes changes. But that iPixieDust is capable of being a standalone TFTP and HTTP server for those iPixie binaries. Boots now integrates iPixieDust, and that integration, either the Helm chart needed an update, maybe we're setting an environment variable we should, or there may be something with the environment variable that we're setting that's not propagating exactly the way it needs to. And now I've tried to provide the context and I've forgotten the question I'm trying to answer. Could you?
I was just gonna say, I was wondering if you were using Cube for the HTTP service or the TFTP. Like, are you using Metal?
Yes.
LB,
Okay. Yes. So we're using
something.
I think we're using Cilium. I don't know, like, and I don't know what other. I know Cilium's involved. I think maybe the ingress might be an Nginx server. that somehow gets wired up via Cilium. I'm not an expert on all those things, but suffice to say, the HTTP traffic in our configuration comes in through an HTTP ingress and then gets forwarded on to Boots. And so Boots needs to return as the URL for any HTTP assets, a URL that corresponds to a host name that points to the load balancing ingress Kubernetes cluster stuff. Go ahead, Jacob.
If I'm not mistaken, it is MetalLB that is housing the load balancer IP. And then in the Helm chart, they just specify it as an environment variable that gets passed. And then just to add really quick, I don't want to get too deep into troubleshooting here, but it's if I'm not mistaken, it's the DHCP part that's having the trouble passing the client the correct
DHCP response,
location,
giving the correct URL. Correct. That's
exactly
getting that
so.
URL
So
to the correct.
the serving of TFTP and HTTP, it's just sitting there waiting.
Right.
It's actually not having the
Correct.
trouble. It's
Correct.
DHCP part of Boots, which is not iPixie dust. Just FYI.
Right. Yes. Correct. So when we sync up,
Cool.
you are pretty close up to date. Yeah, I didn't want to take up too much time, but I did want to mention it in case anyone else was like, "Hey, Boots is broken." Like, yes, I may have broken it just now, and we're going to try to get that cleaned up.
I noticed there was some other interest in the between Slack and maybe GitHub, where people were looking to use the DHCP server in different and unexpected ways.
And that's where Jacob's, so there's another piece of work that Jacob started, which is the new Tinkerbell DHCP server / library that is intended to then be like to rip a bunch of stuff out of Boots, and Boots could you could either operate a DHCP and a iPixie dust, or you have Boots which could pull in those components, but making it more mix and match so that if different environments have different requirements, not necessarily saying you have to do it the way Equinix Metal does it with Boots.
Is it fair to say that we could be clearer about what's going on with the Boots refactoring? Or am I making that up?
Possibly. Maybe there. I mean, maybe there's not enough documentation out there or notes about that stuff, but I don't know. I think Jacob's goal was, I can't speak for Jacob, but
Yeah. I think this new repo is buried in a proposal somewhere. So yeah, I think 100% we could be clear. And I don't know the forum or the medium in which that would be helpful, but yes, yeah, 100% agree. We could definitely be more clear about that.
anyone watching this video in the future, hey, we're messing with Boots.
Yeah. And that's like one of those problems that we haven't been kicking off our Semver version. So we got them placed in the sand last time, but haven't moved on. Chris, would you mind if I put Jason right before you, because of the he's going to follow up with some sandbox stuff, which I think will be directly tied to this, and then we can go into the sort of issue roundup.
No, that's not okay. No, yeah, of course.
All right. Jason?
Yeah, so basically this is a follow-up from a few weeks back where I mentioned that I was working on trying to get the sandbox release updated with the state of the latest bits for Tinkerbell. So got distracted by some other things, getting ready to pick this back up. Part of the challenge is that we're not publishing Semver tags for all of the individual repos right now still. So going through and trying to get that sorted out first. If there are any outstanding PRs or issues that you think should block the updated sandbox release, something like the Boots issue that was just brought up, please do raise those to my attention so that I can make sure that we get those included in this sandbox release. The goal is to try to get the sandbox release out either later this week or early next week. So if there's anything that you think needs to be included in the release or anything that shouldn't be included in the release, please do let me know.
Thanks, Jason. Chris?
Yeah, it was just a a quick one to highlight this GitHub issue. At Amazon, we were talking about the Tink workers. The TLDR is Tink workers timeout. So it was more just to highlight the issue and pose the question: is anybody actively working on that, or is that something that we can address? Because our use case is that we want them to run indefinitely, and this issue looks like it's suggesting it's a bug. Looks like you raised it, Marcus, on behalf of someone.
This is a many issue? Or
Yeah,
many,
Yeah, Tink worker. So I think the answer is that there's probably no one within Equinix Metal currently working on this. So if you folks have the bandwidth to work on it in the short term, then that will not be duplicate work. That's the answer you're looking for.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you.
All right. If anything else on that, then it's time for Micah's summary of all things cool that he needs reviewing.
Yeah, quick question before I jump into those PRs. I heard mention of a Boots refactor. Is there a TLDR or an issue or something pointing to what is exactly is getting refactored? Is that just the iPXE stuff, or is that the structure of Boots?
All the things.
Okay.
I can post you let me post the proposal real quick. But the quick TLDR is there's kind of discrete parts of Boots. But for example, iPXE binaries, the DHCP stuff. There will be like an auto iPXE service as well. All of those, the idea is to pull those out and make them their own libraries.
Cool. Yeah, as I've been doing these other PRs and hacking on Boots, I noticed that there's some opportunity for other refactors just in sort of the structure of the server. And I didn't want to, if that was going to be happening, that's great. If I can make PRs to that too, separate, I might dig into that. Cool, thanks.
Yeah, especially since I think it also
Yeah,
it still has like this back end that we're using in production to cacher, which no one in the community outside of Equinix Metal is probably using. So any like right, the sooner we are able to get from cacher to Tinkerbell, the sooner like we'll be ready to like just rip that stuff out. But in the meantime, working on the components that are not necessarily related to that in smaller, cleaner repos is definitely hopefully will ease work.
Yeah, there's like some use of like an empty interface and some type switching stuff and switching on environment variables. And I was like, yeah, okay, we could probably clean this up a little bit. Okay, cool. Yeah, so on these PRs I have, I have 4 open. So I just wanted to issue a call to get some more eyes on them. They're like not, I don't think any of them individually are super controversial or like complex. I tried to, as I've been working on the Kubernetes backend stuff, I was doing a lot of this stuff plus some more, and I was like, let's rather than make one huge PR, I'll try to break this up and make this a little bit more modular ahead of time. So the first one is just this Tink worker, which sort of extracts the like all the things that the Tink worker does, like talk to Docker or log, talk to Docker to log container or to reach out to the Tink API. It adds interfaces for all that, so it can be stubbed out. And the second one is, which one was that? Pull these up. Second. Second one was a Refactor, Grpc server package. So that one is the setup of the Grpc server currently in Tink server mixes business logic, like certificate setup, and the listener. So this kind of pulls it apart a little bit. Get certs, configure the gRPC server, register the business logic, so we can sub out for different business implementation logic, like using Kubernetes as a backend. The third one was what was that? Oh, there's some cache. So the Kubernetes controllers just add some additional index. Oh, go ahead, Name.
The mention of certificates makes me wonder. I know, I think I had started on a first very crude approximation of like make TLS optional that I think Manny picked up on. I don't know if this is, if you've seen that, does it conflict? Is it not conflicting? Just as long as it's on your radar is what I wanted to make sure.
Yeah, TLS is optional. That it's already merged. It's what this does is like if you have TLS, the certificate like modification time and certificate content is served on the HTTP server. And so getting the certs was injecting that into like a config object that was passed around to different things. So this just makes it a little more modular. The third PR is just add some indexes to the client side cache of Tink controller or anywhere else it's imported. So if this is imported in say boots, you can query by a worker ID for workflows that are in a running state, because boots needs that. So that rather than duplicate that code in boots, I just added it to this index because it's useful here. It's useful in boots. And also add some methods on the last one is add some methods on the workflow CRD type. And that just, again, boots will use this too. And this allows you to just use some of the get API types easily off of the workflow CRD. So these are all sort of bite-sized individually to make the future or the current API Kubernetes work a smaller diff and more easy to read.
Thanks for the summary, and I do appreciate all the PRs. I've been looking at them, and I've thrown some thumbs on some of them, and then had to get my thumb recycled as changes went through. But I'm keeping an eye on it. I know other folks in the community are also leaving some feedback on those issues. My concerns in general about these refactors are just when we see things that are being made public. When we see new types being declared public, are they things that we're like ready to commit to? And likewise, when we're like pulling things away into internal, are we going to miss it? But largely in terms of refactor, this is all just like cleanup, and it's kind of easy to say yes to. Just wherever we just have to make sure that we're calling out changes. It all goes back to that semver stuff, making sure that we're not going to break our users. Maybe that is a good.
Well, technically we're not 1.0, so breaking users isn't as big a concern, right?
It's not a concern because we're allowed to do it, but it doesn't mean that we should do it without letting people know what we're doing.
Sure.
Yeah. A lot of my my feelings about that come from like Terraform providers, where there was just this standard changelog template, and it was, what are the new features and what are the breaking changes, etc. And it wasn't as low level as the code, but it was just very clear that if you were using this provider and you read the next changelog, you know what to do to change how you're using the provider. And if you didn't call it out, in the case of Terraform, the HashiCorp folks would call you out on it, and they would tell you no. They actually held the merge button for all providers, or the release button, so you couldn't do it. And then they kind of gifted that control over to the community. And then, certainly other projects, when we get into SDK level changes, which is what we have here, and we have downstream users of the SDK, that those are the folks that I'm worried about breaking now, not just like users. I do wonder about Tink. The Tink project now is like doing so much community or Kubernetes stuff now that it almost feels like the Kubernetes parts could be moved into their own project, but you know, I don't know. With all the refactoring we're doing, it's not something that we have to think about now. Which leads maybe to, unless there's other comment on that. No.
I maybe not about the Kubernetes part, but more just about the like the stability part. Like, do we, the Kubernetes does this where if it's in KK, like it's not, it might be publicly in the Go sense, like exportable and importable, but not necessarily committed as stable, even if the semantic version of Kubernetes gets released. We don't have to decide that now, but that's probably something we could think about. Like, there's Go importable, and then there's also stable. And where's our line on you know, what does V1 mean? What does importable mean? Do we need to move everything to a /internal package so that it's like
so we're free and clear of all those problems?
Right. Yeah. Like I haven't thought deeply about it. I mean, we could move everything to internal, like that we don't want, and that's an easy answer. It makes it a little hard to try things out, right? Like if you want to have yes, this is what we're publicly committed to. Here's what's clearly not importable elsewhere, but also maybe a gray area of like something we want to try, but we're not like committed to stability on. I mean, maybe we have a just different package for that, and that's a fine answer.
In other projects that I'm reviewing, that like other SDK projects, I'm trying to hold that line there. Like the projects are like O dot something dot something, but when we go from like an O.7 to an O.8, and we're introducing new types or removing new types. I'm calling it out, and in some of these cases, these projects have prematurely leapt into the V1 and V2 area. So it's even, I have to be even more fungible on what I'll allow and not allow as like a reviewer. And so when I see this, I'm bringing that baggage into the reviews, and but I think it's for the good of users, like we're seeing with this Tink boots thing. We don't want some, especially because we're not rolling. We have folks who are running on unsemantically versioned code, and there's no real definition of what they're getting, which maybe brings us to this last point, which is milestones. I linked in the Zoom chat a Boots issue that was a proposed Boots roadmap with a bunch of checklists on it. Toward the end of that issue, I'm talking about a process that I was using elsewhere to just introduce very dumb milestones that are based on SemVer revisions that we know are going to happen in the future. We can't create a milestone that says this is the milestone where we focus on tracing, or the one where we focus on stability or Kubernetes controllers, because we don't really have that roadmap laid out. What we do know is that there's future versions, and what we can try to do, I think, is park issues into those versions and then move them around as necessary. But it at least gives us some sense as to where we're going until we have something a little more ironed out. And I was wondering if there's any feedback on that. If there's not, then maybe it's something where, you know, I'll carve out these milestones, and then we can use that maybe in triage party meetings, or community-wise, we can try to figure out what it looks like to shape a SemVer milestone based on the issues that we want to have addressed. That goes back to what Jason was saying, that if for Sandbox, there are certain things that need to make it into the release, that this is how we would identify that.
I don't have a specific comment on the specific milestones, but maybe just throwing out there generally, I think we're quite interested in what the community thinks it's going to take to go 1.0. We're very interested in getting off experimental status. So yeah, this discussion just sounds awesome because I think it probably feeds into that, or leads to it at least.
Yeah, it's a big question, and there's, I don't know that there's a strong appetite for hitting that let's not break our code right now, but it needs to be something that gets figured out, and probably sooner than later, because we've been on this roller coaster of change. And certainly laying out what the issues are that will get us to all of the versions up to 1.0 will show us where we're thinking as a community so far. And then I think it needs to be kind of formalized into like a real roadmap doc, like a design style document that talks about what Tinkerbell is not, and where it's headed. So it's nice to get all the issues, but we need to formulate that into something that you can read and understand without farming all of the issues. I don't know if anybody's attempted that in the past. Jacob, because I'll pick on you because you didn't have your mic and then you muted.
No, I've not done it with any large open source projects. I've done it with internal kind of stuff, but yeah. I think I do want to bring up one thing that goes along with this is in the governance model, the maintainer's role actually calls out specifically this idea of steering the kind of technical direction of things. And I wonder if getting like official maintainers dubbed or whatever you want to call invited might help some of this go along, because this kind of feels like creation of the milestones, getting tickets in would be something a maintainer that's kind of in their role and responsibility. And if I don't have that in the governance, maybe that's something I should put in. Well, no, I have it here. It's very clearly in there. Set technical direction and priorities for the repositories, define milestones and releases. Anyway, so it feels like maybe that could help if getting the maintainers invited and then getting a core group of them and then having them kind of push out a lot of this and shepherding the kind of communication to the community about, hey, this is what we're thinking. What does everyone else think or whatever? Just a thought.
Oh, it's a good thought. Thanks for your work in putting that all together. It's that Kubernetes way, right? We write what we want to do and then just carve out how we get there. So we're going to create and communicate Tinkerbell milestones, and we're going to have to, with this maintainer group, we'll have to also figure out how this maintainer group functions and meets. I don't suppose you solved that one for us. No.
No, sorry.
Okay. Okay. So with that, we've reached the end. Is there anything else anybody wanted to bring up? No? Then let's call it. Thanks everyone for joining. And next week at the same time as the Tinkerbell Triage meeting, if anybody wants to participate in those, it's real easy. You just show up and take a look at some issues and leave some kind of comment on them so that we can keep our stale trackers low, and hopefully we solve some. I tend to always try to fix PRs in that time window, and that's probably not the most effective use of the time, but be better. All right, see you 2 weeks from now. Bye.